Welcome you all to Believers Eyes Academy. In today's topic of the day discussion, we will be discussing the immense role of AI, artificial intelligence, in the development of the country, most specifically to cater to the vision of Viksit Bharat, that is to reach its target or the ambitious goal to become a fully developed country, right? To develop India to be a fully developed country by 2047. And let's try and understand the emerging or let's say the role of the emerging AI technology in achieving India's Viksit Bharat by 2047. So even before we try and understand the role of AI, because this was recently released by one of the reports which stated the highlight or the underscoring nature of AI in helping the country achieve its Viksit Bharat. So even before that, let's understand what Viksit Bharat is. So Viksit Bharat basically is a transforming or let's say an initiative or a change that tries to transform the behaviors or the habits of the people in India, especially to make sure that it is transforming the entire country to developed nation within the next 25 years. And it tries to attend to various aspects, mostly the youth, the poor, women, and the farmers, right? So these are the core areas which the Viksit Bharat tries to attend. One is to empower youths, because understanding that youth is the backbone of any country, and since India has a tremendous amount of the present youth population, so hence the Viksit Bharat Yojana or the schemes tries to address the youth population to make sure that their contribution will eventually help India become or achieve its target or ambitious goal. And then important thing is to add another sector of the people, which is the poor, right? Considering the poor population and the requirement which is required in terms of policy measures, right, in terms of giving so many government assurances or in terms of schemes that can help poor to come out of their huge problems. So that is also another important core areas that Viksit Bharat tries to address. And most importantly, it even talks about addressing women issues, especially not just in terms of empowering them, but also creating a safety net for the women in terms of certain government policies and schemes for their betterment. And also not just that, also improving in the area of personal safety, right? Even drafting certain important policies which can help tackle all those problems that women of India were presently facing. And most importantly, last but not the least, the major initiative or the major contribution is for the farming sector or the farmers, ultimately to ensure that their income is guaranteed even before it is doubled, and also to make sure that a transform is what is brought about in the Indian farmers, where now they will be turned, like let's say now if we have to go under this particular points in as to what Viksit Bharat tries to achieve, we will be addressing is that as well, because in under the agriculture transformation it talks about transforming the Indian farmers from Annadhata to Urjadhata, right? So these are all the important core areas which we have classified or segregated to these four important pillars. And now let's in detail just try and understand what these or individually what all of these points talk about addressing these segments. So it requires what? To attain the Viksit Bharat or to achieve that goal in the next 25 years, the government requires, or let's say the India needs, first and foremost governance reforms. So it has to reduce compliance burden, accountability, and especially bring accountability in the bureaucracy, and bring more electoral reforms to make the entire system more transparent. And then it even talks about economic reforms, where it talks about land and labor flexibility, stronger banking structure for more financial inclusion, and then research and development push, and also tax simplification, which we recently saw after when the GST was reduced after the very recent GST Council meeting. And then in terms of the industrial push, it wants to uplift the MSME sector, and also it wants to bring in Atmanirbhar in defense. Atmanirbhar in defense basically talks about developing the indigenous defense technology in India, which India is currently going on. We've made a lot of videos on that. Kindly check it in our playlist. Now, and also it wants to make sure that the country has or has innovated Atmanirbhar even in the energy sectors as well. And talking about the agriculture transformation, as we discussed, it wants to transform the Indian farmers from Annadata. Annadata basically means he was the provider of food, right? Annadata essentially means that he is a provider of food. He was a provider of food. He still is a provider of food. But from this particular status, now the country or the Viksit Bharat tries to transform the farmers to Urjadata. Urjadata is the provider of power or energy, right? And this directly talks about the present biofuel technologies that we are trying to enhance, and it even is talking about bioethanol blending, and also talking about the solar power capacity of the country, and also essentially utilizing all the renewable resources or energy resources for ultimately creating the status to the Indian farmers. And in terms of human capital reforms, it talks about bringing more reforms in terms of education and healthcare. So learn basically is an acronym as to understand various aspects under the education as to what it tries to address. L for literacy and learning, where it wants to try and raise public spending to 6% of GDP to strengthen foundational skills and improve teacher training, right? E stands for education regulation, right? To reform UGC, AICTE, reduce the administrative burdens and all of it. And then A talks about acquiring skills early, right? Integrate vocational training in schools to align academics with industry needs. And then R talks about the reaching the global standards, right? By inviting foreign universities with an aim for global rankings and import, or let's say even improve sports and extracurricular infrastructure. And then ultimately N stands for nurture and innovation, and especially most importantly in the digital learning field, like using edtech, and also even to digitize the entire curriculum, and also even to try and reform the testing. Example is Parak. Do let us know in the comment section what Parak with respect to learn, or let's say with respect to digital learning or nurture innovation is. Anyway, this is one of the dimension, right? And ultimately this goal is to transform India's young population into globally competitive workforce for Viksit Bharat, which pretty much covers the youth aspect that we discussed, right? Then talking about the healthcare, the cure, C stands for coverage and care, talking about universal health coverage through Ayushman Bharat, right? So that is also very important. Ayushman Bharat, ultimately to strengthen the primary healthcare, right? And then U stands for unified standards, right? Enforcing mandatory hospital accreditation, and even standardizing medical products for safety and affordability, right? U stands for that, unified standards. And then R stands for records and rights, like using the Ayushman Bharat health account, ABHA, the Ayushman Bharat health account, to ensure digital health records, to create that database of patient, and also, to ultimately protect their database, right? So that is also part and parcel of it. And talking about the E, talks about encouraging innovation in the edtech field, or let's say in the medical field, right? Promoting medtech startups, supporting the research and development in the biotech and pharma industries, building more number of trauma care grid for emergency services in the country. So all of this pretty much subsumes everything. And talking about sustainability, it talks about green growth and renewable energy adoption. So we'll just erase all this. It looks very shabby. Yeah. And talking about the digital leadership, as we discussed, AI infrastructure, cyber laws, and even developing data protection and the usage of AI in an ethical manner. So now let's move on to the key highlights of the report. So basically, artificial intelligence has the capacity to add 8% plus or more growth to India's economy is what this report talks about artificial intelligence. And it also says that if this is adopted efficiently or effectively, AI can bridge nearly half of the gap between a projected GDP of $6.6 trillion dollars and an aspirational 8.3 US trillion dollars by 2035. And most importantly, this can even improve the per capita income of the country, right? Per capita income, because that is also one and most important thing that directly talks about how efficiently any country is performing in terms of GDP. Because if you talk about India's present GDP per capita is somewhere about $2,800, right? And talking about the global average itself is around 13,000 US dollars. And talking about USA alone, USA's total per capita is 80,000 US dollars, right? So India tries to improve this, improve the per capita. So what is per capita? Per capita is nothing but total GDP of the country divided by the total number of population, right? It is basically the average contribution of every Indian to the Indian economy, right? So that is $2,800. And in terms of the nominal per capita GDP, or let's say the nominal value in terms of Indian rupees, is somewhere around 2 lakh 35 odd for a year. And if it you take it to a monthly basis, it is around 19,000 rupees per month, which is the average of the per capita of Indian population, right? This means every Indian person, every person amongst Indian population, right, is contributing 19,000 per month. So is this really true that every Indian is just contributing 19,000? No, there is a huge disparity. There are people who are earning in lakhs and crores even for month, and then there are people who just earn about 200, 300, even 2,000, 3,000 per month, right? So ultimately, one of the important ambition under the Viksit Bharat Yojana is to improve the India's per capita, right? So which is possible by the effective adoption of AI is what the report is talking about. And then talking about the three major growth unlocks which was identified. One is the AI adoption across industries has contributed 30 to 35 percentage, right, of the growth step up, right? Especially we have seen all these developments in the banking sector, manufacturing sector. And talking about the generative AI in research and development, it has been found that it adds 20 to 30% more in terms of how it is contributing to the research and development technology, especially your drug discovery, software assisted vehicles, innovation in tech services, right? Another 15 to 20% in terms of the innovation in tech services. And in terms of the potential outcomes, it has positioned India as the data capital of the world, and creation of an AI already, or let's say AI ready workforce through upskilling and research. And it has also made sure that sectoral transformation has happened, especially in the manufacturing, finance, pharma, and the automotive sectors, which pretty much is like the backbone, or I could say that one of the most effective sectors in any modern economy, which is trying to give or push the country's GDP to the levels that it wants to expand to. And then talking about the job security, it has even talking, or let's say the potential talks about, or let's say the AI's potential has even been proved in terms of ensuring job security through continuous skilling and AI driven industry transitions. However, this is quite controversy, or controversial, and also this is quite subjective, considering all the layoffs that happened with respect to the AI integration, right? Many people lost their jobs. But any which ways, one of the potential outcomes is that AI, rather than the bad side of AI, the good side of AI is that it has enhanced, or it has kind of helped the manufacturer, or let's say helped certain institutions to instill continuous skilling to its employees, and also build an AI driven industry ecosystem which can help the transform the entire workforce, right? And talking about the implications, first is in terms of economic, AI can accelerate India's growth trajectory, narrowing the GDP gap with China and the US. Of course, this definitely, if harnessed well, if AI is utilized effectively, it has a huge potential, especially considering the youth population of India and considering all the brains of India which is trying to go out of the country, right? So if we have certain policies to make sure that the youth which are going out of the country, to make them retain in our country and also try and harness the AI potential that we are capable of, then definitely this point holds good, that India's growth trajectory will definitely accelerate, right? And it will also kind of help or make sure that it will compete with some super economies like China and the US. And talking in terms of the social implications, with the right skilling ecosystem, India can avoid displacement and ensure inclusive AI-led growth. As we discussed earlier, of course, this AI integration is quite controversial, but it also says that with the right skilling ecosystem, right, provided if the skilling of all the employees are properly done in terms of how to harness or how to use the AI, then it even says that India can avoid displacement and ensure inclusive AI-led growth. In terms of federal, it helps in creating strong center and state cooperation, with which also is expected and needed to implement reforms across agriculture, industry, and education. And talking about the global implications, India can emerge as a responsible AI leader, provided if it is effectively implemented and set. It will also help India to set ethical and regulatory benchmarks while harnessing its demographic dividend. Demographic dividend is basically the immense youth population that India has currently. And in terms of strategic implications, AI adoption aligns with India's ambition of becoming a tech-driven, self-reliant global power by 2047. Now, that's all. We have hit the bottom end. Now we will solve one prelims question and end this video. Consider the following statements regarding artificial intelligence and India's growth potential. AI adoption in industries alone can account for more than 30% of the required GDP growth step by 2035. Generative AI in research and development is expected to contribute less than 10% of the growth setup or growth step up. One of the key outcomes projected is India emerging as the data capital of the world. Which of the statements are correct? Kindly use the comment section, leave your answers below. I hope you have liked the video, and I also hope the video was very informative with respect to the AI's role in helping India reach its Viksit Bharat target by 2047. Anyway, that's all for this particular video. For more such interesting contents, please subscribe Believers IS YouTube channel. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal.